Hi, folks. I hope you're doing well. Um, Currently on my journey, I'm really focused on one purpose, and that is destruction of the ego. And I'll expand on what I mean by that as I go through today's video. But like I said, I'm trying to destroy the ego, and one of the books that was suggested to me, and one that I'm currently working through, I've been reading it over the weekend. It's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. And for those who've never read it, it's essentially built around the ideas of a man called Alfred Adler. And Alfred believed that many of our problems are not caused by a lack of ability, they're caused by a lack of courage. So, what does he mean by that? And do I agree? At first, I disagreed because I don't know. I disagreed and then sort of agreed. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Because I sort of hold the belief that surely people fail because they lack resources, right? Some people are disadvantaged. Life is unfair. We know that. Some people fail because they lack knowledge. Some fail because they lack opportunity. Most fail because it's a combination of all those things. But in reading the book and trying to understand the message, and in getting older and reviewing my own life and my own life experiences, the more and more I think that Adler was pointing to something deeper when he said we fail because we lack courage. Many people don't fail because they can't do the thing. They fail because succeeding would force them to confront themselves. And it's something I've previously talked about. And like I said, it's still a topic that it's one of those topics that the deeper you get into it, the more you realize how much more there is to uncover. So many people don't fail because they can't do the thing. They fail because succeeding would force them to confront themselves. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, imagine you tell yourself, I could start a business if I really wanted to. That's a comforting thought because as long as you never try, as long as you never actually start the business, your self image is protected, it remains intact. Your ego is protected. You never have to discover whether you're actually capable of starting and running a business. Same thing as whatever the goal. Imagine you tell yourself, I could get into shape if I had more time. Again, that's a very comforting thought because your identity is protected. The reason why you are out of shape and are not getting into shape, the problem is not you, the problem is time, if I had more time. Or, like I say, take whatever example is applicable in your life. I could write the book, I could read the book, I could learn the skill, I could make the investment, I could budget, save, and invest, I could build the life that I desire. Maybe, but for a lot of people, that's where it stops. It's I could. They never test the reality. And until the reality is tested, it's just a story. It's just a story that you're telling yourself. And that's where ego enters the picture. To my earlier point where I said my current goal is destruction of the ego. Most people think that ego is arrogance. Ego is not arrogance. In fact, often it's the opposite. Ego is not arrogance, it's protection of self. Ego is anything that protects your current identity from reality. That is what your ego is. Ego is anything that protects your current identity from reality. The excuse, the rationalization, the endless preparation, the perfect plan that never gets implemented. That is ego because it protects your current identity from reality. You never have to do the work of actually finding out if you are what you think you are. All those things serve the same purpose, and that is to protect you. What is it protecting you from? It's protecting you from reality. Reality is dangerous. Reality can tell you that you're not as disciplined as you thought you are. Reality can tell you that you're not as intelligent as you thought you are. It can tell you that you're not as knowledgeable as you thought, that you're not as prepared as you thought, that you're not as capable as you thought. And that hurts. Finding that out hurts. But here's the paradox, and this is why I'm going through this process, and I encourage you to also try and go through this process. The pain of discovering the truth is usually much smaller than the pain of avoiding it for years. The pain of discovering the truth is a lot smaller than the pain of avoiding the truth for years, because avoidance compounds. The missed opportunity compounds, the unrealized potential compounds, the regrets compounds. And eventually you find yourself carrying a burden that is far heavier than failure. And that burden is uncertainty. Uncertainty in the sense that you never discover what would have happened. You never discover who you are, what you're capable of, and what your life could have become. And that's one of the heaviest weights a human being can carry through life. Failure is painful, but at least it teaches you something. A failed business teaches you something. A rejected proposal teaches you something. A bad investment teaches you something. A failed relationship teaches you something. That pain of failure at least gives you something back. It teaches you something, and once you take the lesson, you can grow. But a life that's spent avoiding reality teaches you nothing. Which is why I think one of the most valuable traits a person can develop is truthfulness. The ability to look internally, to self reflect, and be honest with yourself. The willingness to see yourself clearly with all your flaws and limitations. The ability to reject the story that you keep telling yourself to protect yourself. To admit when you're wrong, to admit when you're scared, to admit when you're avoiding something, to admit when the evidence no longer supports the story. Because growth begins the moment that reality becomes more important than ego. Growth begins the moment that reality becomes more important than ego. And again, I'll admit that is a very difficult trait because the ego feels good. It feels good in the short term, but reality pays better in the long term. So the question that I'm currently working through, and it is the question on top of my journal this morning, and I'm working through over today and the next few days, is where in my life am I protecting an identity instead of pursuing the truth? Where in my life am I protecting an identity instead of pursuing the truth? Because the answer to that question will point me directly to the next level of growth. The answer to that question will help me destroy the ego, remove the uncertainty, and help you make the next step.